feel it right in my taint.
That's the cue, George. Hit it.
There we go.
Stand by me. Stand by me.
You know how you always see the commercials like "Don't do drugs, kids," and there's always that one girl that was like no bones. Remember, she was just so lazy in the couch, and you see her just look like a blob. I'm like, that looks pretty cool. Whatever they're watching.
Oh man, they made those commercials. There was like that, like if you do drugs, like your
Yeah.
whole family's drowning in the pool for some reason. So you doing drugs prevents them from being able to swim.
Yeah.
See, the one that sticks out to me is always a Johnny Depp one with the egg on the frying pan. I always
Oh
felt
yeah.
hungry afterwards.
I remember
Yeah.
watching that and I was like, well, can we put a little adobo on that egg? Let's get a little flavor on there.
Welcome back to Not a Strong Start, a podcast by filmmakers who talk movies, television, and get the munchies watching drug commercials. I'm your host, Dan by me.
I am not your host, Maximum Fire Starter. I feel like you can't say the word maximum without like getting intense. Like it's just part of it.
And of course, I'm the other guy. Where's my cake?
In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Stephen King movie adaptations. But first, we're going to hit you with a current event.
Recently, we've been seeing a string of like changes, most not looked at in the most positive sense by consumers when it comes to streaming service, pretty much across the board. All these changes have been happening over the last, I would say, like couple of months. Do you guys think we're starting to see the downfall of streaming services as we know them? And for those of you who don't know, some of the things that are out there is we've been seeing price increases by all the streaming services, ads being added, and possible news alerts while you're watching things, features and contents being removed, aka Disney Plus, um, even more spread out exclusivity content all around, and then the crackdown on account sharing, just to name a few things that's been happening over the last few months. What do you guys think? You guys again think that we're starting to see the downfall of streaming service?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I mean, it's not gonna be like next year or anything like that. But I feel like as we go along, I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now, we're back to a system that's similar to like network television or cable. Like cable was the answer, and I can see that being the answer again.
I feel the same way, especially when you see Disney, because Disney owns Hulu as well, right?
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
they offer that package of, Disney Plus, plus Hulu, plus ESPN. It seems like that's inevitably where they're going, because I would see some like Paramount, right? Where Paramount has their own streaming. It's like, okay. Peacock has their own streaming. Peacock, I understand, but Paramount, like, do they really need their own? And then it's like, CBS, CW, like there's all these extra little add-on stuff that you have. And eventually you're going to run out of content that doesn't justify the cost anymore. So it seems like they're going to eventually bundle up together, like some of them have already been doing, and just put it all under one umbrella. So like, I don't know why doesn't Hulu and Disney Plus just kind of merge? So that way you have like the Disney Plus section and you got the Hulu section. It seems like that's kind of where they're headed to. And then I agree with George. I think it's inevitable that it's going to eventually become like network again. You own it all. And the whole point was just for nothing.
Especially to your point, like if you notice on Hulu, they're already showing things that are on Disney Plus. Like you can watch Werewolf by Night on Hulu now. It's like you probably have both already. Why do that? Why are we like double dipping on yourself? It's a weird thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The streaming services took off because it provided everyone an alternative to cable, because cable was ridiculous. Having to pay for like 200 channels when you're only watching five and not really having able to cater it to what you like. So streaming offered another avenue. The value was there because there was so much content that you can watch in one place with like Netflix. But all those advantages from streaming we're kind of losing already. You know, now you can't see everything in one place. You got to go to seven different places. Now that economical aspect, when some of these used to be $8, $9, now you're looking at 16, 17, $20. And now everything is starting to go a la carte. So now like HBO Max is be like, this is poor HBO Max, but you can add a sports package. You can add this package. Amazon Prime does that. So in the end, they are literally just becoming cable again, what we escaped. So like George was saying, I think we're going to cycle back, and we're going to see a lot of these streaming services slowly die off if they keep on in that route.
I have a theory for you guys. So as we have the whole writer strike and actor strike that's going on right now about revenue streaming percentages and what they should be getting, if they were to build one giant conglomerate streaming service, let's say, that incorporates all these, it kind of seem like that's a little wiggle room that the studios have or these streaming platforms to kind of screw over the writers and the actors a little bit because you
Whatever
can
loophole
hide
they
the
can find,
cost.
they're
Yeah,
gonna do it.
there's always a loophole, but you think about
Yeah.
how cable worked to begin with. If they're going to be putting commercials in there, that's how they're getting paid. You know what I mean? That's the
Yeah.
revenue right there. You know, and that's kind of the route they're going through now by adding all the commercials into these streaming services. Which really, when you start thinking about this whole strike, why is there an issue to pay them? You're getting money. You know, that was the way it was done in the past. Why does it seem like we forgot how to do it now?
All right, well, let's get right into it. So, this is revolving around Stephen King's works that have been adapted into movies. So, right off the bat, have you guys personally read Stephen King's book? Just putting the movies aside for now. We'll start with you, Dan.
Yes, I have. So my mother was part of the Stephen King book club when I was young. I remember my aunt was as well. So me and my cousins we knew about Stephen King. You know, our moms were huge readers, so naturally some of the books passed down to us. So we watched a ton of Stephen King movies, you know, back then. So I grew up on Stephen King. I like him. I have a lot of respect for Stephen King. There's some works that are out there. There's a lot of work that's out there that's like, this is really weird and bizarre and strange. But I know, you know, he's notorious for having his own kind of psychedelic phases where it was a lot of hit or miss with some of his projects. But some of them are really dope as well. And I really respect him as a writer. So absolutely.
What was the last one you read? Do you
The,
remember?
the last one I read, I had reread it maybe about 2-3 years ago because I didn't read it since I was a teenager.
I admittedly had never finished a Stephen King book like that I've started. I've dabbled within like the Dark Tower stuff, like before like the movie had come out and everything. And like Dan, my mom also was an avid reader. No clubs, just for herself to get away from my dad, but loads of Stephen King books and VC Andrews books growing up, which is why I watched the movies. So very, very much a part of my upbringing, like yourself. But I probably watched more movies than I finished any novels per se.
What was the last one you started and didn't finish? Was
The
it a
last
Dark
one I
Towers?
started was probably The Shining. It was because I want to freaking finally read this book so I could see like what the hubbub's about, why everyone gets mad, you know, over like, well, this is better, that's better. Why doesn't he like it? Why does Stephen King like Kubrick's version of his thing? And then I got too distracted. I don't have ADHD, but like I like doing other things after overtime.
Well, it looks like we're all three of us are on three different sides of the spectrum. Dan's read quite a few. George has started but never finished. I never even bothered to start. I can,
You
I can
can't fail
say
if you've never started.
exactly. I can say I've never read one Stephen King book, so my judgment is strictly on the movies themselves. I have no book or source material content to like shape my thoughts of the movies in either way. So when I go into these movies, I'm literally just judging it on the movie itself, not the source material. It kind of like what George just was mentioning. I read a lot when I was a kid, like books. And as I got older, I like to always be doing multiple things. You can't do that when you're reading a book. So I kind of got away from large book reading aspect. So I never actually did.
Because even at my age now, either because I write a lot, when I write, I don't do any reading because then reading bleeds over into the writing and I can't have them mix. I go completely in the zone when I write. Then when I take breaks, lately I'm noticing I've been reading a lot more screenplays than I have novels. So I go through like a binge where I'll read like 3 or 4 novels in like a 3-month period. And then I'll go like 8 months without reading a novel. So like I go through like long little spells and I'll read real quick, but it's just like what you guys said, there's just so much going on. And when we, all three of us being creatives, you get, the creative energy that you put into that. So like I'm sure with you, George, when you do art, maybe you're watching a lot of animation or maybe you're reading a lot of comic books and that's kind of where your brain is. So novel is one of those things that as you get older, you get kind of distracted quicker.
any novel in Stephen King's one, at least from what I've heard, and then you can attest to this. Uh, there's a lot to these. There's a lot. So when you're doing these adaptations to a movie or a TV show, which I'm sure it's a little easier for TV show because you have more room to fit in some content. But for a movie, you're cutting these huge novels into maybe, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Or if you're gonna do a two-parter like you did with It, you get a little bit longer, but you're still having to adjust and cut out a lot of things. Um, so do you feel then, as someone who's read it, that some of these adaptations have had to shift a lot, or has most of the material tended to stay true to the original source material?
That's a good question. I feel like they deviate a lot because a lot of it is dependent on the film's budget and then the creativity that they attach to it. So a lot of these adaptations of Stephen King projects have been more lower budget or kind of medium budget. They haven't really been big budget movies. So because of that, you have to get rid of certain set pieces or certain big events that you can do because maybe you just can't afford it. And then sometimes you attach something like The Shining with Stanley Kubrick, where there's an artistic approach and the director makes artistic changes to the story. Now that's debatable whether it's better or not. I'm going to say that it's not debatable and that it did improve it, but I'm sure we'll get into that part later.
And George, I know because you started a few books, uh, and you already spoke about The Shining. But besides The Shining, did you at any point watch a Stephen King movie and be like, "Ooh, I want to read that book"?
Uh, I think when I saw Christine when I was a kid, because that's probably one of my favorite movies that was based off a Stephen King book, and I always wanted to see how like the book would elevate some of like the terror of being like stalked by the car.
I just did the rewatch of Christine last summer as
For the
part of
horror
the
movie thing.
100 horror movies that
Yeah,
was on there. Yeah.
yeah, it's so good. Like, who doesn't want a car? He's like, show me, and then it just fixed itself.
Yeah.
No
Show me
scratches, no
that you
dents. I got
love
you.
me, car.
That would come so much in handy while driving in LA because your car
Right?
gets dinged up and
There's no
everything.
worries.
No, nothing.
So
Hakuna
And it's my
Matata.
favorite car growing up. I love the '57 Chevy. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful car.
Yeah.
It was the original Tesla. So we found this little like survey that had 70 movies that were adapted from Stephen King's works. And we decided to take this survey to see where we all stand on movie watching. And we were all on 3 different levels. So we'll start with you, George. Out of the 70 movies that were on here, how many had you watched?
According to that list, I have watched 43, but out of IMDb, I've watched 62 pieces of his work. So I got more. I got more in the bucket here.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll go by this 70 because that's what I
Yeah.
Yeah.
what I did also. So you were at 43. Dan, where were you at?
I was at 84% of them that I watched. And it's funny because you guys had did the survey first, and George was like, Dan's probably gonna be in the 80, like mid 80s. Sure enough, I was 84%. I'm like, how the hell did George know this? I did. And the thing says you did better than 99% of the users. The average score is 19. And I had seen about 58 of that. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? That either means you can look at it positively and say, you're an avid movie watcher, or you can look at it and say, Dan, you really need a life. You see too much. Get the hell outside, man.
There's 4 decades of Stephen
Yeah.
King to absorb. I give yourself some credit there. Give
There you
yourself
go.
That's a big time frame to catch up with these movies. It's not like you did, 58 of them in the last like 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah,
That's how
that's
it was for
true.
me. Most of these movies, like I saw when I was a kid in the '80s. So it's like I
Yeah,
haven't gone back to them.
that's true. And he did live up to his last name, King. Like he was the king around like these 80s, 90s. Like it
Yeah.
seemed like most of the made for television movies, at least half of them, dude, was at least Stephen King coming
Oh yeah,
out.
on
So
ABC,
many. Yeah.
every year there was like another like Stephen King movie. Were they
Yeah.
good? But
Yeah.
it was always going to be one.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's to horror what like Tom Clancy is to action spy thriller.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty much
Yeah,
just
He
like,
is.
well, we want an action spy thriller. All right, let's
Yeah.
check out what Tom Clancy has. We need a horror. Let's check
Yeah.
out what Stephen King has.
Yeah. It
Since
always
you
comes
bring that up,
around.
I was,
No,
I
no,
was
I'm
going to say like something important about Stephen King compared to every other writer, like ever.
Mhm.
He's one of the only ones where like if you have a project, his name is top billing.
Yeah.
Like Tom
Yeah.
Clancy can't even say that. Like he'll have movies that are based off his books, and the actor, the director we put first. But a Stephen King piece, it's always Stephen King.
Except for The Shining. It was Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. But
That's
yes,
one out of
yes,
hundreds.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
that's the
it
beginning.
goes,
You gotta think that's like what his second,
yeah,
third adaptation, right?
yeah,
Because he had Carrie, I think, before that. And then
yeah.
I can't think of what else there was, but that was like the dawn of like him becoming something amazing for film adaptations.
And I think what helps is, and I don't remember the exact details, but like I believe there's a way that you can actually get permission or license to adapt his work into movies for like $1. I think they call it like the dollar child or dollar baby. But there's this thing where he actually makes it very easy to adapt his work.
Hmm. You know what?
Okay.
There's a lot of respect there, and it also plays in the fact that probably a lot of these movies again are smaller budgets. So he is the name
Yeah.
brand that ends up selling these. But that you see, again, you find out little things about that from Stephen King where it's like that's where I give him a lot of respect. He didn't have the huge ego where he wasn't letting people touch his stuff unless it was like certain top A billing, right? Because like you hear about that with some writers where like, nope, if anyone's gonna touch it, it needs to be this high level. I mean, he was getting like Tommy Knockers and Langoliers made. I remember I was like, what's this movie? Langoliers? I
Oh
looked
man.
around like, I guess. And sure enough, there we are setting the timer to watch it on TiVo. The Langoliers.
No, and that's good. On my end, I was above average compared in that survey, but below you guys. I was at 27 of the movie, so I was above average, but there's still some catching up. I will though, there was some in there that I was like, I feel like I've seen this, but I don't remember, so I'm not gonna count it because I might have seen it when I was a kid. But there was 27 for sure that I know I had seen.
I will say this, Jose, we respect that number, but me and George are going to continue to drink like this with our pinkies out for this episode.
Maybe slur.
Well, since we've all seen above average, some way more. Some people need to go outside and breathe because they're watching 58 movies. But it's that his works touch all different genres, and even within horror, they touch subgenres of horror. What do you feel has been the subgenre that's been adapted the best onto the movies? We'll start with you on this one, George.
I think for me it's gonna be the drama. Anything like super dramatic that barely touches any horror, any supernatural. You know, you look at something like freaking
Green Mile.
drawing blanks. Yeah, I was gonna say the Green Mile, but in Shawshank Redemption, Stand by Me.
Me.
Like those three right there are solid films that anyone can go to and be like, oh, that's just an amazing dramatic film. Deserves an Oscar for whatever you want to put an Oscar for it. You know, and then you find, oh, Stephen King wrote that. The guy who gave us The Shining and all the other
Langoliers.
horror classics gave us that. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if whoever does it in the studios, like they do a great job of tackling it and just bringing it onto the screen and getting the right talent to also showcase these characters that he's writing.
Yeah, it is crazy. I feel me personally, it's not it's not the best movies that are all the adaptations that have happened, but my favorite, like me personally, I would have to go with the supernatural, subnatural. You know, things like Harry, Christine, The Shining, 1408. Those are some of my favorite adaptations from him. Are they the best movies? No, I gotta go with Shawshank, Green Mile with those drama, the ones that you gave. But out of personal preference, I will have to go with the supernatural one. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with George on that because the adaptation, at least what the filmmakers have been able to do with elevating the source material to some extent, you know, with horror, it's very tricky because when you get kind of medium budget, it can be a lot of hit or miss. And with a lot of horror, sometimes it turns out and it could come off as really, kind of sloppy, not very good. The drama, though, Shawshank Redemption is regarded as one of the highest rated films of all time, like one of the greatest movies ever made. And it's hard to argue that. I love going to it every so often and watching it. And then you mentioned the Green Mile, which gave a great performance by Sam Rockwell, amongst others, but it even had Oscar winning performances. So it's kind of hard to argue against the drama, but I know what you mean, Jose, because a lot of those sci-fi, supernatural, those are the ones I tend to go towards more, like more is horror. And I know that's what he loved the most, but man, this shows the versatility of Stephen King. The fact that we're
Yeah.
even able to debate this because he was known as one of the horror kings of writing. And here we are mentioning some of the greatest dramas of all time. Like, that's phenomenal.
I mean, he's done it all. Like, there isn't a genre that he hasn't written. That's the thing. When you're a guy who writes every single day of your life, you're gonna touch it all.
That's the thing. Like, I do agree with you guys. Uh, the best movies to come out of his work are those dramas. But with those, is I watched them, thought they were amazing, loved them. I don't revisit them much because they're tough content.
Yeah.
Especially like Shawshank and stuff to like get through. It's not a movie you like watch every year or every like other year for the most part. Some of those other movies, I'm willing to revisit a lot more, especially once it gets to that horror season and things like that. That's why that was like my personal preference on that.
No, I give that to you because that's like I'm gonna watch Creep Show at least twice a year. Like Creep Show's my go-to movie when I just want to pop something in. I was like, there's nothing on. Creep Show, boom. Not even I don't even think about it.
Well, with that being said, we touched on the genres, but what's everyone's favorite movie? And if they were to eliminate all the Stephen King movies except for one, which one are you choosing to survive? Dan, we'll go to you. I'm sure we're going to be highly surprised at this response.
It's only the one that's right there, The Shining, which is my favorite horror film of all time, one of my top 5 movies ever created. So I got to go The Shining. And that's what makes it ironic to me is because I love Stephen King. You know, he's without him, we don't get some of the greatest stories ever written or created or crafted, I should say. But to have him not enjoy that version of The Shining, but enjoy the made for television, which is an abomination compared to what we saw from this. That was the first time that I remember being a kid and saying, wait, they're remaking this? Like where it bothered me, right? Because now that we're older, reboots, remakes, it happens all the time. But I don't remember being that affected as a kid, even though obviously there were remakes before, you know, with The Thing and, you know, Invasion of the Body Snatchers and all that. But that one bothered me. And when we watched the made for television movie, it was just like, this sucks. This is bad. And then the only thing I remember, because it's been so long since I've seen it, they used what the book's ending was. And I maybe that's why he enjoyed it, but he said that thing's closer to the source material. And to me, it felt maybe it was like a creative ego to a certain extent of I wrote what the story's supposed to be, and Stanley Kubrick came in and because he has an ego, he had to alter it and use different things that I didn't imagine, and he made it way more of a psychological horror. But like to me, that's what made it so damn genius and brilliant was you didn't have to sit there and do the jump scares. You were letting us freak ourselves out by the stuff that you were presenting, whether it's the visuals, the music, the editing, the cues, the slow burns, the why is that there? Why isn't that there? And us sort of justifying and kind of creating these reasonings in our head. That's why I love The Shining so damn much. It's a psychological mind blank.
See, when you initially asked this question, you said what's your favorite movie. You didn't say like I gotta eliminate everything.
Now you
Well,
have
that kind of
Do you have a
changes it. That kind
yeah?
of changes it now.
Do you
Like,
have a favorite? So I assumed that if you had to save one, you would save your favorite.
well, yeah, well, I have a lot of favorites. I have a lot. All right, damn. I think I'm about to go with the one that I just mentioned. I was gonna say Stand By Me because I used to watch it so much when I was young, and it was like a great coming of age story. But I don't think that's the one I'd save. I don't. I think the
arguably
one
the greatest, right? It's arguably the greatest coming of age story. Like it's
yeah,
definitely top 3, I would think, you know.
like I've relived moments of my life that emulate like walking on train tracks that go over a bridge and then someone gets stuck. Like I've actually lived that moment in my life, and it's like it's so relative. And but this, I go like I said, I watch Creepshow twice a year. I love Creepshow so much. It combines Stephen King and George A. Romero. It's like how do you fail with that? It's perfection.
I just rewatched that earlier this week. I was like, what? It's been a while. Let me watch some Creep Show.
Yeah,
So,
it's great. It makes me
yeah.
so happy inside. Like it's horror, but at the same time, it makes me feel good, even though it shouldn't. I get so happy after I watch Creepshow.
You said it makes you happy inside, right? You know what else
Yeah.
makes you happy inside? Our sponsor, Pete's Meats. Pop-up barbecue joint in San Fernando Valley. You can go on Pete'sMeatsSFV.com, find out where they're going to be, and let them know that the Nos team recommended you, and they'll hook you up with free food. No, they won't. I lied. They won't hook you up with free food. But still let them know we sent you. Maybe they'll throw in like a biscuit or something.
Yeah. But satisfaction is free.
Trust me, go ahead. Once you get some Pete's meat inside of you, you won't regret it. For me personally, this was tough because there's so many of his movies that I go to a lot.
And you've only watched like 5 of them, so.
Huh? Hey, 7. Okay. Now it's gonna have to be the Shining. I'm gonna have to agree with Dan here. I'm gonna have to go with The Shining. It's just that movie, the way it creates that balance between like the supernatural and the psychological, that to the point that to this day people still debate and fight each other whether it was really supernatural or it was just all a psychosis the entire time, and you still get that debate. And that shows you that after all this time, the movie just balances so well that it can teeter either way. And it's like, which one is it? And I think that's what I appreciate the most about the movie The Shining, which is why even when you go back, you're never 100% in one boat or the other. There's always that reasonable doubt. Was like, oh, maybe it is this, maybe it's not. Who knows? So for that, I have to go with that, but it would not be an easy decision at all to eliminate some of these other ones.
I have to
Not
ask,
at all.
with the release of Doctor Sleep, does that now kill that debate?
I actually have not seen Doctor Sleep.
I have a feeling
Don't.
Dan has.
Oh, I seen it. I saw it in theaters, and I knew I wasn't gonna like it, and I was like, you know what, I need to watch it again. I mean, watch it, and then I saw it, and I was like, yeah, I kind of wish I didn't see it. So yeah, but I can separate it. You know, a sequel doesn't ruin the original for me. I can keep them
Yeah.
separate because Kubrick didn't do it, so it's different, right? It's not the same. But if you guys had to save a second, which one would you guys save?
Oh, that would be Stand By Me. I got my backup then. Now I'm
Okay.
good again.
Okay,
I'm in the clear. Thanks, Dan.
I would do Shawshank Redemption. I think that'd be the one I save. I got to save a drama if I'm going horror.
I'm gonna go with a drama too, but I'm gonna have to go with Green Mile.
Mm.
With the Green Mile, that's it's. I mean, Shawshank is too, but that one's just really powerful, and Tom Hanks' performance in that is great. So I'm gonna have to go with that one.
Okay.
Although I did want to go horror again, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, we did.
I saw the struggle inside. Like,
I know. Yeah.
I was like, Christine, Carrie, it's no, but I have to go with
honestly,
that.
for me, Misery was going to be like the number 3.
That
Oh,
Misery is
Misery
really
so much.
close, man.
good.
There's
Yeah.
yeah. I really thought
Yeah,
Jose
right
was
now you're
gonna
thinking
go
about
Pet
it.
Cemetery.
Yeah,
I thought Jose was gonna go
Pet-
Pet Cemetery personally, but all right.
Yeah, there is.
Maximum Overdrive.
Pet Cemetery be the
Designated Fun.
first one to be
To
eliminated.
burn. Jose's like, I need Kindle on that freaking Lonely Island that I'm on.
I know.
I'll eliminate it, and then I'll make sure it's buried as far away as possible from any cemetery so it doesn't come back.
I was gonna say, it's gonna come back, but it's Pet Cemetery too. Oh, come on.
Oh,
Hey,
it's
that's
better.
arguably the better Pet Cemetery.
It is.
I will watch
I
part
think it
2
is.
over part 1.
It is
Yeah,
the best
it's
Pet
more,
Cemetery
yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we've discussed on all the genres, all the hits and things like that, and even some of the non-hits when it comes to Stephen King. Overall, if you were to take the body of work of all the Stephen King adaptations, do you feel it's been successful overall? We'll start with you on this one, Dan.
Has it been successful? Okay. I haven't read nearly all the ones that I've actually watched, so it's kind of hard to say how they've
Just
kept
the
it
movies. I'm
Oh,
talking about
the
the
movies in
movies.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. You know why? Because it's I'm not going to go off a percentage game, because even just going off the survey we took, it said 69 movies, which is an insane amount of adaptations, probably more than anybody that I would know that come off the top of my head of any other writer that had that many adaptations. And then George said he looked at IMDb and it was like what, 80 or something, 90, something
Oh,
like
there
that.
was a
Like
lot more. There's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more.
And we knew if there was some that was missing. I was like, hey, Thinner wasn't in
Yeah.
here, you
We're
know?
not even talking TV shows, so
Yeah,
so you know
That's what I'm
TV
saying.
shows.
exactly.
Yeah, like well, that list which showed like Salem's Lot, the theatrical version, and then
Yeah.
also Salem's Lot, the TV version with Rob
Mm-hmm.
Lowe.
Yep.
But yet it didn't show like Rose Red. It didn't
Yep.
show Tales from the Dark Side, the freaking
Mm-hmm.
Outer Limits,
Yep.
like the Twilight Zone. Like there's so many things that he had written for didn't
Yeah.
mention that were important.
Yes, exactly. That's why I would argue yes. And I think by this logic, it's an obvious yes, is because we were struggling with just limiting down to 5 to 6 that we said that were either our number one or number two option. That in my mind, all of those are like genius level type projects that came out, like phenomenal in what their category or genre was. And there's still at least 10 more that we could just scream out right now of his movies. So to even have as a writer, having 5 projects that came out that were considered phenomenal adaptations, you already won, period. So to me, it was a success. Absolutely. And that doesn't even go into like it. We haven't even talked about it yet.
Either one of them.
Either one of them, and they both were successes in my book. So like we're not even getting into those things, you know. It's just yes, absolutely. It was a success.
Yeah, which we will have to do a follow-up episode at one point where we actually dive deeper into this. This episode was just more of a overall how have the adaptations done because there's been so many of them. So what about you,
Yeah.
George? Do you view it as a whole as a success?
Uh it's yes with a caveat to it. And it's because of the fact, like we said earlier, like he's written so much. You know, like if you ever see interviews with him, he talks about how he writes every single day, like a good artist should. You know, a good comic book artist is drawing every day, and he's a good writer who writes every single day, no matter what. He doesn't skip a day. You know, and so with that, you're gonna have success because you're failing so much. You know what not to do at times. You know, and I think an important thing to put in there. I don't know if people know this. So I used to work for a company called Famous Monsters, like on my shirt, and it was a big magazine back in the day. Stephen King was a fan of this magazine and a fan of horror as a kid. He wrote to the magazine and like a little short story, and the editor, Forrest J. Ackerman, turned it down and said it wasn't good, you know. And I mean, let him know it's like, I can't let you be, you know, be a part of this issue or whatever. He was nice about it, but pretty much he declined someone who become the most greatest writer of all time. You know, so this is a guy who takes failure, learns from it, and then turns it into success. You know, so I think that's a big part of his career and what he does. There's a lot of things we haven't mentioned that probably aren't good. You mentioned Langoliers, bad movie.
Yeah,
You know,
horrible.
and the book, I don't know, it could be also bad too. Who knows?
Yeah,
But when he hits hard, he hits really hard, like the movie
yeah.
It. You know,
Yeah, and there still are little ones that are not very well known, like Thinner. I still somewhat enjoyed Tommy
I
Knocker
love
with Jimmy
Thinner.
Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, Tommy Knocker with Jimmy Smith, like that was a made for television movie. Like I enjoyed that one, you know, like Langoliers, I use it as a joke a lot because not only is the title like the word sounds funny, but even when you saw the bad motion graphics of like
those
little
things in
Pac-Mans
the air.
just eating, yeah, like yesterday, like that's what they're eating. Like it was just so ridiculous what they represented, but whatever, you know. But there's still so many little nuggets of Stephen King projects that we like, you know, especially us liking horror that the average person never even seen and had no idea that he did them.
1408 is another one that I feel doesn't get a
1408,
lot of
yeah,
attention.
I mean,
yeah,
think about that one.
exactly.
1408 was a short story.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very short story. You can read it in a couple minutes, and they turned that into an almost 2 hour movie.
Yeah,
That's the opposite of most adaptations where you have
Yeah,
to take
yeah.
out things. They had to add things.
yeah, exactly.
With this one overall, I feel the hit rate isn't very high when you look at the cumulative work.
Yeah.
But when it's a hit, it's a hit. It hits big for like a classic. So like I feel you have to judge the success rate like you would in baseball, not like you would in basketball. So if like
Yeah.
30% of the adaptations hit, that's a success. So I feel that's how kind of we have to look at this because again, like you both mentioned, the hits are top tier. and more than make up for a lot of those ones that probably should have never been greenlit in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
the thing. Like
true.
when the movie's so like, if there's an adaptation that's so good, you forget about the 10 bad ones
Yeah.
that came out afterwards. This
Yeah.
this new one is so good that you'll give a chance to the next 10 that come out afterwards that also probably aren't good. We're like, he did so good here. I gotta give it a chance. I don't
Yeah.
want to miss that next one that's gonna be hitting this
Mhm.
as hard.
Yeah, and that's sort of it as well, because if you get if he's been adapted 1,000 freaking times, what does that say? Like, you as a writer getting paid every single time that happens. So from a financial standpoint, he's super mega successful in where he's going. But why are they adapting 1,000 different iterations of his projects? Is because there's enough hits to keep them coming back to the well, knowing that, like what George said, this could be the next one that hits. Because there's been so many. You keep going to the same pond fishing for gold and you keep getting those flakes, you're going to keep going there even if you strike out on like back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Nostradamus still gets credit, and he got a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, he did.
Uh,
Yeah. All right. I mean, this whole episode's pretty much been a big Q, but why the hell not? What's on the queue? What do you recommend for a Stephen King movie? One that we have not mentioned as one of our favorites.
I'm gonna go with one that's kind of underrated. I think Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher's a really good one. I think it's worth watching.
Good one.
Dan's eyes shifted and think he disagrees with me, but I don't care. Shut up, Dan.
Yeah, I was gonna say turd demons, but okay. A little monster thing. Let's see. There's so many I can mention, but I'm gonna mention the most random movie that's not necessarily great, but kind of fun to watch. That was a made for television movie. Sometimes they come back. Random Stephen King movie. I enjoyed it when I was a kid. You know, it was kind of funny enough where they made sometimes they come back again. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So it's not just sometimes anymore. It's more oftentimes now if they keep
Yeah.
coming back again. But okay.
So that's a George Romero.
Yeah.
All right, I will go with one that we haven't mentioned. I actually need to rewatch this because I haven't watched it since I was young, so I don't even know if it holds up. But Sleepwalkers.
Sleepwalkers is great.
Oof. I like
I liked
Sleepwalkers,
it.
but it has not aged well.
Oh,
So
I haven't
it is
seen it.
I
I
not-
haven't seen it in at least 15 years. So I
Yeah,
believe
same
it.
I
here.
watched
Not since
it
I
a
was
couple
young.
years ago. Like
Oh,
about 2
didn't?
years ago. I watched it again. And
Dang.
yeah, it's fun. It's a fun watch, but it has not aged well.
Did it age better than Pet Cemetery did?
I mean, if you like incest, then yeah.
No.
I mean, who doesn't? Thank you for watching another episode of Not a Strong Start. You can like, comment, subscribe, share on our YouTube channel, Not a Strong Start. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Not a Strong Start. I'm your host, Dan By Me. You can follow me at King_Sangre.
I am not your host, Maximum Firestarter. You can find me at This Is Me over there on Instagram.
And I'm the other guy. Where's my cake? You can find me at Nicolopolis, wherever Nicolopolises are sold.
Now I want some cake.